program in partnership with Clarington Public Library and the Municipality of Clarington, sponsored by Ajax Legion and the Islamic Society of Ajax. As you see, our event for this evening will be recorded. My name is Carion Fenn. I'm your host for this evening. I'm a TV show host at Rogers TV, the president of the Carion Fenn Foundation. I'm also the Parent Council Chair for Durham Catholic Virtual Elementary School.
I can't get my thing to go on.
I will. Oh, technology, eh? I would like to call on our partner, Erica Maytag, Community Development Coordinator, Municipality of Clarington, to do our land acknowledgement and bring greetings on behalf of the Municipality of Clarington.
Great. Thank you, Carion, and thank you everyone for joining this evening. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. We are all joining from different locations, and I would like us to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home and on where we do our work. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples that call this land home. Myself, my family, and my ancestors are settlers of where I currently live and work, which includes the Municipality of Clarington. Clarington is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas and Chippewas of the Anishinaabe, known today as the Williams Treaties First Nations. The municipality's work on these lands acknowledges the resilience and contributions by these First Nations peoples in this area. I am grateful to the First Nations peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth. Let us move forward together in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration.
Thank you, Erica.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
And you may bring greetings, Erica.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
So as Carion mentioned, my name is Erica Maytag, and I work for the Municipality of Clarington as a Community Development Coordinator in a portfolio focusing on diversity and inclusion. The Municipality of Clarington is grateful for the opportunity to connect and participate in this conversation. I'm eager to listen to and learn from our speakers during our time together tonight. It is important to have this dialogue and understand how taking care of our family, our friends, and community is dependent on how we take care of ourselves. I would like to thank all of you, our participants, for joining us this evening, and I would like to thank the Carion Fenn Foundation and Clarington Public Library for their partnership and for inviting us to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Our workshop is presented to you in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Week. You will hear from our speakers, go into a breakout room, and come back for a healing activity with CMHA Durham. Before we get started, I would like to thank Melissa Redden, Deputy Director at the Clarington Public Library, who have worked tirelessly with Erica and I to pull this evening together. Our theme this year is compassion. Steve Maraboli said, "A kind gesture can reach a wound that only compassion can heal." Through our workshop each year, our goal is to help you learn how to recognize, build, and continue to build your resilience to be your best you. That being said, let's get started with our greetings. We are honored to have our special guest and dignitary join us to bring greetings to help support the community. When I call your names, please come forward to bring greetings. I would like to call on our partner, Monica Mahacek. I think I get that right? CEO at Clarington Public Library. Go ahead, Monica.
Thank you very much. Good evening. As you said, my name is Monica Mahacek. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Clarington Public Library, Museum, and Archives. I am proud to represent the library and the library board and the Museum Advisory Committee here this evening. We are very grateful to the Carion Fenn Foundation for hosting tonight and bringing to us the importance of compassion and resilience in such a challenging time. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to call on John Henry, Durham Regional Chair. Go ahead, Chair Henry.
Well, good evening, everyone. And first of all, Carion, I want to thank you for all that you do But I really want to take a moment to thank the sponsors and the Municipality of Clarington for their assistance today too. You know, we've just gone through the most difficult time in the history of our region since the end of World War II. And we've learned so much from each other, but what we've learned mostly is that we're better together, striving to the same principles. And I really do want to take the time to thank you all for being here tonight, and that together we are Durham strong.
Together we are stronger, indeed. Thank you, Regional Chair Henry. I would like to call on Liz Roy, Deputy Mayor, Town of Whitby. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. And Carion, thank you very much for the opportunity to give greetings on behalf of Mayor and Council. We are about to start a council meeting, so I've stepped out to be here this evening, and I'm quite excited to be able to give greetings on your second annual resilience workshop. It's so good to see that the organizers, the volunteers, and the participants coming together and being so committed to such a positive workshop, Carion, and to everyone, and to the partnership with Clarington. This is such an important time, as Chair Henry just identified. It's that stronger together that we'll be able to move forward together. So good luck tonight, and hopefully you have an enjoyable, informative evening. Thank you very much for this time.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. Good luck with your council meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Please.
Our next greeting is by Pinder De Silva, Senior Director of Programs and Services at the Ability Center. Pinder?
Thank you so much. So very excited to give greetings on behalf of Ability Center. We're an organization that's very much focused on improving accessibility and inclusivity for everyone in the communities where we all live, work, and play. And resiliency is certainly a concept we've embedded into many of our programs when we're working with kids, youth, and adults with disabilities to support them in building those skills that are needed, like confidence and competencies and coping skills. And the pandemic has certainly impacted each and every one of us in different ways.
No, but they would see
really
that.
Time for us to look beyond surviving this pandemic and find ways for us to thrive again as individuals, as families, and as a community. And if we start by being kind, caring, and compassionate, not only with others, but with ourselves, then we are certainly on the right path. So I hope you all enjoy the workshop topic and take some great learnings away from this evening.
Thank you so much. As a person with a disability, I value what the Ability Center brings to the table and the importance of compassion when inclusion. So thank you very much, Pinder. Next is Shaheen Butt, Ward 3 City Councilor, City of Pickering. Go ahead, Councilor Butt. I think you're on mute. Councilor Butt? Oh, can we ask him to unmute? Oh, no, I can't.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
My apologies, my cursor wasn't as strong as my fingers here. Hey, listen, it's good afternoon, everybody out there, and it's really great to have you, Carion. You're a household name. I watch your programs on Rogers all the time, and I think you have great subjects to offer the community. And I'm looking forward to be here on the compassion topic. I think we all need it here. So it's educational. I look forward to being on. I may have questions to ask you after or during the course you have. Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much, Councilor Butt. It's great to have you with us. Our next greetings is from Tharani Ramaswaran, Stakeholder Relation Manager on behalf of Town of Ajax, MP Mark Holland. Go ahead, Tharani.
Thank you, Carion. Hello, everyone. As Carion mentioned, my name is Dharani Ramaswaran, and I am the Stakeholder Relations Manager from MP Mark Holland's office in Ajax. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank the Carion Fenn Foundation for all the health and wellness programs you offer, covering a wide range of health topics. And thank you to the Municipality of Clarington for partnering in today's workshop. This is the time to recognize and build resilience within our community. The pandemic has taken a considerable toll on our collective well-being. We have all experienced a collective trauma. Now more than ever, it is critical that everyone in Canada has the access to the services and supports they need when they need them. We all have a role to play in helping to bring those supports forward, prevent stigma, and making sure our friends and neighbors don't have to suffer in silence. Once again, I'd like to thank the Carion Fenn Foundation and the Municipality of Clarington for providing a space to have these important conversations about our collective health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes our greetings for this evening, and thank you to all our dignitary and special guests for bringing greetings and showing support for our community and its mental health. Sorry. I'm doing this event without a special friend here with us today. Sparky Johnson is no longer with us in the Clarington area. I co-host with her, so it's a sad moment, but I'm glad to see that we are partnering with the Clarington Public Library in the municipality. We are also joined by Michelle Radway. Michelle will be our board of director in Clarington, representing our seniors and working together with the library as well as the municipality. So I just want to say welcome to you, Michelle, and I look forward to you coming on board and transitioning Sparky as an honorary board member. So now let's get started with our program. I promised I wasn't going to cry. So our first speaker for this evening is Maria James Schreier, registered nurse and author of Cultivating Compassion. Please go ahead, Maria. Is Maria with us? Okay, don't see Maria in our list. Is Candace with us? No, we don't see Candace. How? So you got me to speak. I'm going to text our speaker. So what does compassion mean? Does anybody know what compassion means? Who wants to answer that question? Nobody? Are we all shy? Melissa?
Hi, Carion. It's Melissa Redden here. I will give my definition of compassion. So compassion to me is empathy and understanding towards each other, and taking that sort of respect and being mindful in our interactions, that we all have different life and lived experiences, and those will impact naturally how we engage with one another, and extending compassion and understanding and empathy in all those interactions with one another, and how we engage in daily things, not knowing necessarily what happened to someone 2 minutes before perhaps you're speaking to them. So I hold that with me in all my interactions. And I know many people extend the same compassion and courtesy to me on times when I am just not myself as well, and I look for that. So that is how I think of compassion on a daily basis.
So why is it important that we are compassionate to each other? Because I always say these things tend to be free. There's no charge to it, unless there's a cost that I don't know about, but it's free. And I think if we try to be a little bit more understanding of each other and understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoe and how that person would feel, or how you would feel, I think that would help us a great deal. And now our speaker is trying to log in. She's having a bit of a hard time checking in. If we can just double check to see if she's in the waiting room, and then we will get started. But we had a show on compassion, and we had our speakers to help us understand the meaning of compassion and why it is, or what's the difference between compassion and empathy? Does anybody know what's the difference between compassion and empathy? I feel like I'm having a classroom here. Melissa. Okay. So, and just, you can bear with me 1 second. I apologize 1 second. So Melissa, you want to take over for a second? I just wanted to send the speaker. She's having a hard time getting in. If you want to take over for a second, I'll be right back.
Thank you. So based on what Carion's question is, what's the difference between compassion and empathy? Erica?
Sure. So I was actually going to build on what you shared, Melissa, about
you.
what you feel compassion is. I think it's not only our interactions with others, but also our compassion for ourselves. And I think sometimes that's the last compassion maybe we're free to give. Maybe because of certain things we're going through or what have you. But I found lately in my journey that something that I've been learning about is how to have compassion for myself and to be forgiving and allow myself the space and time that I need during different interactions or different situations. So I think it's important too to keep that in mind as well, is having compassion for ourselves, because we all need that.
Hi, I'm Beverly.
Hi, Beverly.
I've known Carion for a long time. None of you probably know me, but I started with her way back when. But anyways, she was asking, why do we need it? I was going to say, because things are tough and the world is tough and we can't be tough on ourselves and tough on, there's only how many, 20 people here looking into compassion. There's millions of people in the world that don't care. And so we have to care about those that we know and be compassionate for ourselves and for others. And even those who are not compassionate to us, we have to give that forward, pay that forward. So maybe they will come and turn around, and that includes family that you can't always pick. But yeah, the world is tough.
Thank you very much, Beverly. You're right. And I think to echo both on that and what Erica was saying, it isn't just compassion outwards, which thank you, Erica, for bringing that up, because that is often how I will say I project my compassion, and taking that mindfulness to ourselves is also very key. That is the step that we often forget, is if we don't take care of ourselves, then it is harder to extend that outward. Monica.
Thank you. I completely agree with what everybody has been saying, and also reflecting on what Carion had asked about empathy and the difference between compassion and empathy. And sometimes you don't quite recognize the distinction between the two, but reflecting upon it, empathy really allows you to get in the minds and the situation of those around you and to see the situations through their lens, and through what we've been experiencing over the past 2 years and what's been happening in society and all around us. It certainly has been an exercise, not so much in compassion, but in empathy and an understanding, a deeper understanding of the experiences of our friends and neighbors.
Thank you very much. Yes, carrying that with us can really make the difference from small things. I was telling someone the other day, they were just telling me how someone they know got really excited over something small. And to me, I said, I think we should always find joy, happiness in some of the small things, because if we can find those things that bring us happiness, we then are in that mindset to be more compassionate and empathetic to others as well as ourselves. Sometimes when you always wait for the big things, they don't necessarily get there, or maybe they're disappointing or don't live up to whatever that expectation is. And then that can hinder our mindset, which then I think in turn impacts our interactions with our family, friends, neighbors, or just anyone you run into. Pinder.
I was just going to add in terms of compassion, I think one of our missing pieces often is we empathize, but then when you look at compassion, it's what are we going to do about it? It's that action item of, whether it's for yourself or for a friend or a family member or your neighbor, that's going through a rough time. It's great to be empathetic and try to be as understanding as possible, but what is the action that we're going to take to be kinder to ourselves or kinder to our neighbors, or supportive of our family members or our friends who are going through the difficult time. So sometimes we miss that action piece, I find, when you're looking at compassion.
That's very true. It's that next step to it.
Absolutely. Sorry, I wanted to just to touch on what Pinder had said. The situation in Ukraine has, I think, for me, has really illustrated what the action is. When the invasion first occurred, my thought is, okay, if I donate money to the Red Cross, that's amazing, that's great. But I want to do something that's very action-based, that I know and that I can see the results. And I had a conversation with a board member, and they said they were going to sponsor a family. And I was like, that's actionable and that's tangible. So I think it was a really good point to say empathy and compassion are great, and it's a good start, but what's the next step?
Thank you very much. Sorry, Carion, before I turn it over, Terry wanted to add.
Just an added thing. I started volunteering, and today was my first day with a new long-term care facility in Ajax. And I'm part of a larger group of residents there. And to see the smiles on the group of, I want to say 12 of them, as we did activities with them, we did fill in the blanks, we did building identification, but they were so, to see their reaction and to see their happiness, to see us coming in to talk to them.
Yeah, it makes a difference, right? Sometimes what you don't realize might be a small thing to you is a huge thing to someone else. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind as well. So thank you, everyone. This was a very engaging discussion, but Carion, I will send it back over to you.
Thank you very much. We're just going to switch it up a little bit because we have our second speaker here. So Candice, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and start with your presentation, and then we will bring in our next speaker after we're able to connect with.
Okay, awesome. So welcome everyone. My name is Candice and I am an adult educator with the Recovery College Wellness Center. So I am actually located out of the Canadian Mental Health Association, Durham. And what we do at the Recovery College is take an educational approach to recovery. So this means that I'm really just trying to focus on health and wellness, and anybody's welcome in that space. So long as you're ready and willing to focus on your health and wellness. And I help you to dig through some of the things you might be experiencing. So today I'm going to talk to you about building resilience for compassion. Our theme is compassion. And I think it's really important to talk about resilience and the role of resilience in order to achieve that state of compassion, or that ideal compassion itself. So my goal today is to really inform and inspire resilience building for compassion, and we'll discuss that in the breakout rooms later on. And on my agenda for my brief presentation is really to redefine compassion. So I'm open and willing and ready to hear some feedback on what are your thoughts on this definition that we're creating together. I'm also going to explore what resilience means, and then we're going to brainstorm some ways to become more resilient starting today. So when I was doing some research on the definition of compassion and really digging through what compassion is, I was kind of struck by this whole idea that it's about others. Okay, so being compassion, working in the helping profession. And, I think the pandemic has redefined what the helping profession is. It's expanded it because we're seeing frontline workers take on this helping profession mind. And I really think it resonates with everybody, this idea of being that helper for others. But I didn't find very easily a definition of compassion that
that considered the self aspect. Okay, so I've done a little bit of research on this, and I found an article, a very recent article, considering research, 2016, so very recent, by Strauss and Friends. I will say Strauss and Friends, that finally involved the self. So this definition created by Strauss and Friends was compassion is considered or as a cognitive, affective, and behavioral process. Okay, so I've added in a few extra words here to summarize this, and that's compassion as a cognitive, including your mind and thoughts, affective, being feelings and emotions, and behavioral, which is actions. It's a process consisting of the following elements that refer to both self and other compassion. Okay, so we're considering ourselves in this definition. I think this is the first definition I was able to find that considered the self. Okay, so we look at 3 parts here, and that's the mind, emotions, and action. So what's under the mind? It's recognizing suffering. So the idea around compassion is that we recognize that there's some form of suffering happening, and understanding the universality of suffering in human experience. So to be human, if you are into Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism, we talk about suffering. Buddhism specifically talks about suffering quite a bit, and suffering being a universal experience, a universal human experience. We need to sort of discover ourselves and build resilience to combat that suffering. Under emotions, we see feeling empathy for suffering and connecting with the distress. This is where we start to connect with the other piece here. Tolerating uncomfortable feelings aroused in response to the suffering, to remain open and to accepting of the suffering. Okay, so creating that open-mindedness to the suffering here. And lastly, our actions. So we might think, we might feel, but what do our actions say? That what are our actions doing that's compassionate? So our actions here is motivation. So we need to be motivated to act or enacting to alleviate that suffering. So we recognize it in our minds that suffering exists. We feel it in our hearts that the suffering exists. How do we stop it? Okay, and we start with ourselves. So I'm going to put that up here because I think that this is really the premise of my presentation here. I think it's really important to discuss this, that true compassion really starts within. And once we fill our cups, we can spill that outward. So I'm going to pose this question to you, which I'd like you to think about throughout this presentation. How do we create an environment that welcomes self-compassion? Okay, so how in the helping profession, how within our daily life experiences, how within ourselves do we create this environment that welcomes self-compassion? Okay. Are there any thoughts on that piece there? How do you think we can create an environment for a talk about that resilience piece? You can go ahead and include that in the chat, and I'll explore that. It's a tough question, and I'm here to give you some answers. So while you're thinking about that, I'm gonna put out the definition, or actually add to that question about resilience. Okay, so why do you think resilience is important for compassion? So that might help you. Okay. Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, why do you think resilience is important for compassion? Anyone want to explore that? Okay. Well, there's a number of, right, okay, I'm seeing seeing empathy fatigue or compassion fatigue. There's actually a phrase that's called compassion fatigue that really targets and really sort of emphasizes that the feeling of burnout. Okay, so working in a helping profession, you do for others, but you seldom do for you. And you're ready and able to do for others, but we seldom do for ourselves. So I want to put this out here again, that compassion involves suffering, whether that's self-suffering or the recognition of suffering of others. But does this mean, or does it mean that, you know, to be compassionate, we need to suffer and stay in suffering? Absolutely not. Okay, to stay in a state of suffering actually reverses the environment where we feel like we can grow, become resilient, and overflow that cup of compassion onto others. So this is where we might experience burnout. So we really need to train ourselves to become more resilient and foster that environment of resilience in order to exhibit true compassion. Okay, so to summarize that, in order to tap into our mind according to that definition, in order to tap into our mind, our emotions, and our actions to become more compassionate beings, we must learn resilience. So let's explore what resilience is. I'm going to do an activity with you all right now. So I'm assuming you're all comfortable at this point. I want you to take a second and touch something. It could be anything. For myself, I'm touching my coffee cup. Okay. Now, I want to see by show of hands or by, you can post in the chat if you feel more comfortable. How many of you have used your hands to touch something? Yeah, okay, I'm seeing some digital hands up. Probably all of us. We've all kind of used our hands to touch something. Now, let's make our hands inaccessible. Okay, so for me, I'm going to put my hands on top of my head. Let's make our hands inaccessible. Okay. Now go ahead and touch something. Okay, takes a few seconds longer. Okay, how many of you, okay, you can let your hands go now. How many of you were able to touch something despite making your hands inaccessible? And what did you use? So I'm seeing somebody post in the chat, an elbow. Yeah, go ahead, Erica. What did you use?
I was just gonna say my feet on the ground.
Yeah,
pretty
nice.
original.
That's great. My feet, my elbow. I use my foot. Okay. Your ears. That one's creative. Feet in my slippers. Yes. So you've all actually demonstrated resilience. Okay. I know this is a silly activity, but you've demonstrated the ability to adapt. Okay. So what is resilience in a nice put together sentence? So Courtney Clark is a resilient speaker. So what she does is she teaches resilience to the world. And what she's developed is a nice definition that summarizes everything here. So it says, resilience is figuring out a new way to behave when your old ways of behaving are not accessible to you anymore. For me, I find that definition so incredibly powerful. Figuring out a new way to behave when your old ways of behaving are not accessible to you anymore. So if we think about the past couple of years, we have had to learn resilience on the fly, okay? I know that we're all pandemicked out, but that was a really great example of a collective resilience effort. Okay, so it's not just one person. Yes, it was one individual or all of us as individuals coming together to do to really bring our communities back, past the pandemic. So let's look at what the definition has to say here. The dictionary definition, it says the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or a certain toughness. So I really like this definition here because it talks about the capacity. So capacity means, we're building this, the skill to be built. So we're not necessarily saying to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. We're saying the capacity to, right? So we're developing that ability to recover. And I think that in itself is resilient. The second definition here is the ability of a substance or object to spring back. So we think of that idea of elasticity. Okay, so resilience, we do an activity at the Recovery College, and one of the students said, resilience to me is like a rubber band. Okay, we stretch it out, and we stretch it to almost our limits and it snaps back, but it may not land in the same spot. And I thought that was so symbolic. It's the idea of being stretched to your limit or being stretched to uncomfortable lengths and snapping back may not necessarily be in the same place, but you're still a rubber band, okay? So you're still being that human being. So I'm putting this important point out here that we first must learn how to overcome suffering through resilience in order to become more compassionate beings. So again, that idea of the cup, okay? So we fill our cups first, and I'm sure you've heard that saying before, but what does that even mean? So let's explore this together. So at the Recovery College, we mostly service individuals who identify as having some sort of mental health issue, okay? It doesn't have to be diagnosed. It doesn't have to be any sort of formal issue. It's just a space that, hey, you want to work on your mental health and wellness, you come to us. And this is, when we use the term recovery, we use it very loosely. So there is something called the Chime framework for personal recovery, which is developed by a doctor. So Dr. Mary Leamy. And this idea around resilience or recovery is pertaining to resilience. So what she's done, and she's a lecturer still to today, so she's still continuing to teach this material. What she's done is created sort of a checklist. So we have this nice checklist to let us know that we're on the right path to being resilient beings. If there's something that we lack within this checklist, we need to work on that in order to become more resilient. So I have here, where do we start? Okay, so where do we start in becoming more resilient and compassionate to ourselves in order to overflow onto others? Well, we start with a Chime framework. So what does this look like? I'm gonna put this up here and let you take a look. There's 5 pieces here. So the Chime framework for personal recovery involves 5 different words, okay, or technically 6 here because one of them involves 2, but we're looking, it's an acronym. So we're looking at 5 different pieces that are pertaining to your recovery, and your recovery can be, you know, for anything. Perhaps you're experiencing compassion fatigue. Perhaps you're experiencing, you know, maybe anxiety, whatever it is you might be experiencing, and that long-term experience of that can be addressed using this framework. Okay, so what's the parts of this framework is connectedness, which we look at in the recovery model or in the recovery college. We look at peer support, social groups, relationships, support from others, and community. And everybody needs to have that sense of support or that sense of connectedness, regardless of your ability or your thoughts around recovery. Every human desires that feeling of connectedness. Hope and optimism is another important piece when it comes to resilience and resilience building, and that is belief in yourself, okay, or belief in your recovery. The motivation, which we talked about before, the motivation to change, and that might be to change for yourself or to change for others. Hope inspiring relationships, so relationships that give you that good feeling. Positive thinking and valuing effort, and having dreams and aspirations. Okay, so this is like a bigger, more macro level when we think about personal recovery. Now we move on to identity. It gets more and more complicated as we move through this. So identity is rebuilding your sense of self. So your positive sense of identity and your positive sense of self, and overcoming any stigmas or any boxes around you. I like to describe it as like a square. Okay, what walls are surrounding you? So let's rebuild that and rebuild a positive sense of identity. Now, meaning. We attach meaning to many things, but in order to become more passionate, compassionate beings, we try to attach meaning to our life experience. And maybe mental health might be a part of that experience. So what is it that's causing me that compassion fatigue, or whatever it is that I'm feeling that's allowing me or deterring me from being more compassionate? So attaching meaning to that. Creating meaning in your life and social roles, that's another part of meaning. Meaningful life and social goals. So part of meaning is to consider the future. Okay, so we think about setting those goals for the future as well. Last here, we have empowerment. Under empowerment, we have personal responsibility. We have control over life and focusing upon strengths. So we start with our smaller circle when it comes to connectedness. Then we move on to things like hope and optimism, identity, meaning, and empowerment. And they don't need to happen in sequential order, but they all need to be a part of that experience of resilience, okay? In order to become more resilient being and therefore a more compassionate being, and to fill your cup and overflow onto others, we need to have all 5 of these pieces. And if you identify within yourself in this moment that you might be lacking in one of these pieces, that's the area that you'd like to kind of focus on. Okay, so maybe you feel like, hey, I don't actually feel connected. I think that's a pretty common one when it comes to the pandemic and what it's caused. We don't actually necessarily feel connected anymore. So we need to reestablish that and reestablish that sense of connectedness. So I know that I kind of went through this quite briefly, but we will be exploring this in much more detail in the breakout rooms. And this is something you can certainly explore on your own as well, because this is very new research as well. And this is something that's being newly implemented in recovery colleges. So with that, I'm posing this question for you. Are you ready to start becoming self-compassionate through building resilience? Is your heart and your mind ready for it? And I'm going to ask if you have any questions. Does anybody have any questions about this brief presentation before we go into the details later?
I do. My name is Beverly. So what about people who have not been through suffering? And how do we get them to be compassionate? I mean, I know we can be compassionate to them. It's really hard. But if they're not compassionate to us because they haven't been there. And so that's a really hard thing too. I know we can only take care of ourselves, but that's a really hard thing to do. And we want to make it more compassionate world. I don't know how we do that. There's only a few of us that are doing it.
Yeah, Beverly, and I think that's one of the things that contributes to burnout, because sometimes it's, I don't know if, would you consider yourself as working in the helping profession?
No, I would be more of a person with rare disease and different illnesses, and trying to show compassion to other people. I'm retired, I don't work, but
I see.
But I do deal with people with illnesses. So I mean, you were talking about compassion, and we have to take care of ourselves first.
Yeah, and I think so. Compassion is it's interesting because compassion is about doing for others, and that's the traditional definition of it. So doing for yourself is challenging the definition as it is. But when it comes to being compassionate, I also think we need to consider intention. So we can't necessarily expect we don't do for others expecting others to do for us, or others to have that same sort of sentiment. It's helpful. But it can be certainly a challenge that's around it too. So it's hard to say because we can't necessarily ask another person to be compassionate. I think that it comes from a lot of introspection. It comes from a lot of life experience. I can say that I also have a rare disease. I have a rare autoimmune disorder. So it was hard for me to even articulate the things that I was experiencing to allow somebody else to be compassionate to me.
Right.
So communication is something that is another factor involved. So it's quite complex. And I mean, if anybody else wants to add to that, please feel free to do so. It's a hard, it's a hard thing to answer because it's hard to ask others to do, exactly what it is that you're doing. I think you can inspire others by continuing to be that compassionate being.
Right.
But
yeah, even though you tell them, I mean, some people, you have to tell people how you're feeling, otherwise they don't know what you're feeling if you just put on a good front. So in order for people to be compassionate to you, you have to express what you're feeling and be honest and not try to put up a good front. But when you've done that already, then you try not to give up on those people, I guess, who don't give you the compassion back. But everyone's definition of compassion is different. So my expectations might not be their expectations, and that's hard.
Yeah, and I think, Beverly, I have to commend you for being so introspective, because that's really great that you're even considering that. And I think that it's communication is real. So communication can be helpful, but it's also readiness too. So maybe perhaps that other person may not be ready to become that compassionate person, and we're asking and really wanting it of somebody, but if they're not necessarily ready, it's hard to ask of them.
Exactly. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, 20 years. So I've been introspective quite a bit. Carion knows me quite well, but I'll let you continue with your presentation. It's quite good.
Awesome, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions about kind of resilience building and its relation to compassion, self-compassion?
I think it's really important that we remember that not everyone is going to give us what we want from them. They may not have the ability to do that. And so if the expectation is there, you're constantly setting yourself up for disappointment. I think the best thing to do, this is my own personal opinion, I say this to my son all the time, I can't change the world, nor can I change the people in it. However, I can affect change by spreading as much joy, laughter, and light as I can to the people that I come in contact with on a daily basis. And it's interesting because sometimes you'll meet someone who is like a super grumpy pants, even when you're walking into the grocery store and it's like, boy, howdy, who did what in your cornflakes this morning? And then you're able to help them turn it around by just saying, are you okay? Like just you're being kind to someone who is really struggling. And just by showing that empathy and that kindness and that caring, it plants a seed. You're not there to water it, you're not there to make it grow, but that one little thing, that kindness that you took that 2 minutes and or less seconds out of your day to just ask someone, how are you doing? That might just sort of turn around their whole day. So I always, like I say, because I don't think that everybody is made to be compassionate and caring, because we're all very, very different. And that's why the caregivers and those who are constantly reaching out to the people that in their lives and others that they know are suffering, it's very easy to get to the place where you burn out. So I just everything tonight has just been, oh my gosh, we got to remember to look after ourselves so that we can be caring and empathetic and resilient in that, and not get our little, hiding our lights under a bushel and getting those lights blown out. We want to let them shine as best we can.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's really well said. Does anybody else have anything to add or any questions around this?
But Candace, is it okay for us to be disappointed that people aren't empathetic? And I say this because, being in a world where individuals are impacted by different ailments, and it's like sometimes it's could be frustrating. You're like, how could you not have empathy? Like, how could you not have compassion? Why can you not have those things? But I think we try, or we think that, we go by the model, treat people the way that you want to be treated. And is it okay for us to be disappointed, or well, let's just say disappointed if we're not seeing that?
I think the feeling of disappointment is kind of like a natural reaction. And it's okay. I think it's okay to have these feelings. There's another concept that we teach at the Recovery College called the internal locus of control. So it means I can only control what I can control. And that's, and what's within my control. So I can't control the reaction of others. And I think in the process of all of this, it's learning how to be kind to ourselves and to manage our expectations, because not everybody has that same introspective or that same kindness. Just like Terry Lynn has discussed before, not everybody is at that level where they can connect. I mean, I can share my own experience with rare disease. It's like, it's hard for one, it's rare, so they've never heard of it. So, there's a lot of like, well, are you sure? And I'm here like, yes, I'm sure. I'm experiencing it every single day of my life. So there's a lot to say when it comes to sort of reminding yourself what you have control over and focusing in on that versus placing the control in other people's hands and those around us. So yes, disappointment's natural, but I think there's a lot that we can do within ourselves that'll be more effective and more combative of the experience that we might have on the outside. And I think Maria has something to add too.
Go ahead, Maria, you're on mute.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, I love what everyone's saying. And Beverly, I think it's an excellent point sometimes where expecting others to behave the way we would, and we're judging them maybe by our own measure, which maybe isn't their capacity or their personality, that they may be very overwhelmed themselves and not even able to engage with what you have going on. So sometimes when I feel that, and I I want to feel sad or disappointed, I have to reframe it and think, wow, they must have a lot going on because, they totally missed all my cries for help or whatever that conversation that transpired.
Right.
And I think they could be depleted themselves and overwhelmed.
Good point.
And we just have to recognize what is and that is, and not dwell on it, and keep doing what you're doing.
That's a great point.
Positivity.
Especially when it's family.
Yeah,
Especially when
it
it's
can be
family.
hard not to be judgmental or truly hurt.
Great.
But they may be living up to the best of their capacity, which
Right.
may not involve that level of reaching out to support you.
Right.
And the second piece of that is sometimes I've been told, well, I can't read your mind. You need to tell me what to do. And I'm thinking, I shouldn't have to tell you. You should just be able to know. Well, the world isn't filled with mind readers that know intuitively our needs. Sometimes we don't even know our own needs. So I think there's so many levels to this conversation, Candace, and everyone that's been involved. It is enlightening, and it just leads you to more questions.
Yes. We have a comment by Philip, and he says, how do you react to people there who claim they are there to help? They talk the talk, but they do not walk the walk, almost as if they have an ulterior motive for being there.
Wow, that's a big question. How do you react? It's hard to. I think actions and words need to match for sure. So I think this kind of goes back to what Maria was saying too. I know kindness is something that you need to have the capacity for. Perhaps that person may not necessarily have the capacity to, or and if I think about it and in like helping profession terms too, perhaps that person is burnt out. So there's lots of things that can possibly cause that. But I think, Philip, to get to your, how do you react? I think regardless of who it is, we continue to react with kindness and react and we approach those situations with kindness, because it's helpful for ourselves too. Because perhaps that person, again, is not necessarily ready, and we create a conflict that's not going to necessarily get anywhere if that person doesn't have the capacity or the readiness to be that kind, caring person.
That's exactly what happened to me today. And I got really mad. And then, someone says they're always helping me, but I don't see them. So yeah, and then this is great for me because now I can go back to myself and say, okay, so they're not ready to do that. They think they're doing it, but they're not ready. So now I can just move on, and then now I can treat them differently. I won't ask them to do stuff, and I might just see them and then not expect anything from them.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there, Beverly, is about expectations. Because frequently we put ourselves out there, and all our power is given away to other people in the hope that they're going to give us what we need, and like that is our hope. So sometimes when someone has disappointed you over, I'm kind of a 3 strikes you're out kind of person, but if someone disappoints you over and over and over again, I don't treat that individual any differently. However, I take my power back, so that person does no longer has the ability to hurt my soul.
Right.
So you can still love and care about them, but you just take that little bit of power back for yourself and just say, I no longer give you the power to hurt me. I still love you. I still care about you. But you need, that's when you protect your loving heart.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Terry Lynn. That was, again, beautifully said. Anyone else have any questions regarding?
Any other question? We can also take the questions in the breakout rooms as well. Thank you so much, Candace, for your presentation. When we get into the breakout rooms, you'll be able to connect with Candace again. We are going to move to our next speaker, Maria Jane Schreier. She is a registered nurse and author of Cultivating Compassion. Go ahead, Maria.
Hi, welcome. Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here and to be connected now. I had a little technical difficulty, so I'm just settling in and getting as relaxed and comfortable as everyone else looks, and happy to be here. Tonight, we're talking about cultivating compassion, and my background is nursing, and I've been a nurse for almost 35 years within Toronto, the GTA, and Durham region and beyond. And it's such an interesting topic, as Candace, has introduced you to, and we can see all the multiple layers and intersects and those relationships that help us stay grounded in our compassion. The learning and experiences that I've had over the years has given me many opportunities to kind of witness others perhaps experiencing compassion fatigue in a number of different settings where there's different policies and procedures that may or may not feel supportive to us in our roles. And also to look at our own individual accountability and behavior and what that looks and feels like to us. And I think Candace described some definitions of compassion, and Thupten Jimpa, who has done great work at the Compassion Institute and author of A Fearless Heart, he shares that if people talk about the attributes of individuals, often compassion is seen as one of the best. So it is something, it's certainly a worthy topic, and I'm happy that Carion and all of our sponsors tonight have chosen this as a topic for us to ponder a little further. When we are confronted with situations, it may seem like we have no choice. And sometimes I can hear already people can see those situations where you think you have a choice and maybe you're not feeling supported. But if we pay attention, there's always a moment when we can bring human kindness into the equation and actually choose to bring compassion to the interaction. Even as Beverly said, when we feel like maybe we're not receiving it to the level that we would like, and we want to be quick to judgment, that's our opportunity to demonstrate compassion. So compassion is reciprocal or a two-way street. So it's always an interactive and dynamic concept. It's not, as Candace alluded to, a one-way giving. It's that it's not an expectation, but there is a dynamic or a flow with compassion, and we want to keep our energy reserves high so that we can be giving from a full cup and not feel resentful or judgmental. And that compassion, having the full cup, really actually benefits others, but it should also benefit ourselves as well to be the recipient of our own self-compassion and self-kindness. So that's where the intentionality or awareness that we need always to be kind of mindful of how we're feeling and sensing those interactions surrounding compassion. We are looking at suffering, but then we can develop compassion much like we develop language skills in young children. There has been research that engaging in compassionate or kind acts without any perception of getting something in return, actually, the more we do it, we can build our bench strength to be standing in a stance of compassionate kindness and not, as Beverly alluded to, or I felt myself too, sometimes a bit judgmental or resentful. And then I realized I must be getting tired because I'm really feeling cranky about everybody. And they're actually here to help me, but I think they're not doing enough. So we have to be aware of our own perceptions of what that expectation is, as we talked about. And it is just a way of being. So the more that we can try, as Terry Lynn said, to bring it to every moment, that is important wherever we are, in the grocery store, within family dynamics, with end of life caregiving, or in a workplace setting, or traveling through an airport or stuck in traffic. We do have the ability to tackle some big things happening in the world if we come from a place of kindness and exploration. So it is a skill to be prepared to face the day. And compassion, I feel the important piece about compassion that grows that is different from empathy is that if you're truly taking a compassionate stance, that will lead you to step forward into some action. So while we had great conversation about the level of that action, leave some conversation, but at least someone's reaching out, someone's trying to do something tangible to alleviate suffering from a place of how can I help? And leaving that up to the recipient to define what that help looks like. Sometimes we feel helpless, or we say, I don't know how to be compassionate. I'm not sure what to do. We need to trust that the person that's open to receiving our assistance can guide us, and you're in it together. You don't have to have all the answers. Just to bring some humanistic action versus inaction. So if we think of a time when you have felt very strong and able to bounce back, trying to think about, how you felt then, and what was it that lifted you up or gave you that extra energy, because we know we don't, life is full of ups and downs, and our energy waxes and wanes. That's human nature. But if you were at reflecting on a moment when you really felt like you could demonstrate compassion in action, how did you feel? And then to take the second step is, what was going on in your life that really bolstered you up so that you had the energy, skill, and motivation to be able to reach out to help others? So think about that in your daily life, because sometimes we do put everyone else before our own needs. And I would suggest being a little, people would call it being selfish, or it's not. It's just focusing on your own self-care, like putting on your oxygen mask first so that you can help others. If I neglect to look after myself or put on my oxygen mask, I will be of no help to Candace sitting beside me in a terrible situation. So it's my pledge to be there for not just myself, but so it can be a community collective of well-being and ease, not to feel stressful or overburdened with the tasks in front of us, but to have the energy to take on whatever needs to be taken on. So we can help by thinking about that and strengthening our grounding to help ourselves as tides shift and we may feel a little wobbly. Within the survey, we asked over 100 caring professions what they did to remain grounded and what helped them most to avoid overwhelm. And it is through many of those insights that we developed several themes in compassion. And two of the biggest things that were mentioned from across the world. So this seems to be universal in our humankind. And I do believe we are more the same than different, although that can get lost in politics and other topics of the day. But it is important to stay grounded in that we're all humankind. But what people responded was that authenticity and social support are critical to keep our well-being. And it is true, like the Beatles said, we get by with a little help from our friends. We need to be authentic in reflecting what's going on for us, and that people are not mind readers. Maybe, sometimes those strongest people that may be living, with mental health challenges, or there's many challenges that were becoming very visible in our society. So everyone is fighting something on some level. And the more we can think about getting by with a little help from our friends, that requires us to be courageous to actually disclose and share to them what's really going on. Or I can walk through work all day and just, hi, I'm fine. Great, nice to see you. We can all put that mask on, or that, whatever you want to call that, poker face. I'm not a good poker player, but I think my feelings are usually written right on my face, but apparently they're not. And we can do a good job in masking that. So who can we be transparent with, and where are those spaces? We can only hope for the most optimum setting, that we live, work, and breathe in communities that are valuing our true selves and our authenticity. However, for many reasons, we're not able to. So if you can find those safe spaces, or at least recognize when you're not in a safe space and seek more of those good places, that may help us step into our own authenticity, thus to have the courage to help others help us, because really they don't stand a chance if we're not being honest with what we're carrying, to ask for support. And when we have authenticity and social support, they defined it like, I heard the conversation earlier, that joyful, calm, and hopeful feeling comes over you because you do feel embraced, like a warm blanket or a warm hug from someone that you treasure. Those feelings will emerge in the presence of authenticity and social support. And it can be challenging to find those places. Yeah. Sorry, I must have like a gremlin attached to me today. Sorry.
That's okay. We're enjoying
Sorry.
the conversation.
Sorry. I have to check something in my house today. Everything has gone wrong in the last hour. And I'm wearing that smile that I just told you to look out for.
It happens to us all. Happened to us all.
There we go. Okay. So resiliency and compassion are connected, and the elements to resiliency will set the stage if we're honest with one another. But the warning signs that people shared of this group of caring professions, but I feel that their words hold true as they worked through many decades in caring professions. You know, what have they learned was really the essence of my book, is what have they learned that they could share with our global community, as now the role of caregivers, or even as we're seeing through COVID, we all need to be helping one another through many conversations and topics, on health equity, on social determinants of health, just in equity in general. But what they said was, when they were feeling very apathetic and alone and their mood was flat, only 10% of people at work even noticed that there was a change in them. So as much as we're striving hard for workplace wellness supports, it's good to use them proactively. Use any benefits that you have that can support your well-being, like massage, exercise, healthy eating, any support that you have. EAP, make use of those programs for mindfulness, any kind of benefits that would speak to you. But family and friends also, they said 50% notice. So I think our family and friends care about us. And so maybe sometimes they're busy, like we mentioned, they may be full of capacity. There might be something else stressing them out, that they're not able to be in tune with your needs. Or maybe do we own that half the time I'm kind of faking it, putting on a strong face, instead of really being brutally honest over a cup of tea to say, I could really use some help. So it's hard to say where that ownership lies, but I thought that was interesting. I think our workplace wellness programs would hope for a higher engagement or higher response. They truly want to help people. I believe their intentions are good. It could be the organizational culture, or the stigma of mental health, or our own guarding of ourselves and fear of disclosing, maybe not trusting who are really our friends, who are our allies. And that can be difficult to navigate, to have those trusting relationships. So it left that 87% of the respondents in the survey, almost 90%, 9 out of 10 of us, are identifying the change within ourselves when we feel depleted and not able to carry on. So that's kind of a sad state. It's a good commentary on self-reflection and the need to pause and take care of yourself. It kind of bolsters the case of self-care and self-reflection, because we may not be able to count on others for those reasons that we just mentioned.
What just happened?
It leads us to some life hacks. As Candace has mentioned, there are many options out there. Sometimes when we're feeling fatigued, they're hard to recognize, but the ones that rose to the top of the collection of voices from caring professions and caregivers, family caregivers, and people within many walks of life. Journalists feel fatigued, people in the media, people in education. There didn't seem to be a sector that wasn't impacted by compassion fatigue. So it's not as if healthcare or caring professions have a monopoly. We're learning through COVID that this impacts us all equally, and we need to be mindful of our own wellness. But what they did suggest is to kind of acknowledge it is what it is. And I think that's been one of my big life lessons is it is what it is. I had a wonderful colleague that said that once when I was in my 20s, and I wasn't quite sure what he meant, but I get it now. And I don't need to fight it. As Beverly was saying, you know, I can't get blood from a stone. I can't change other people's behaviors, as Candace mentioned. I have to adjust my expectations and kind of be real and know where I can go and learn from other people's behaviors. We can try and stay in learner mode. Sometimes we're too busy to even be in learner mode to be picking up on other social cues, and then we can feel sad or disappointed. But it is what it is, and if we're paying attention, we've probably seen those patterns of behavior before. And if I keep going back, I probably own more of that than the person who's not helping me. So I can kind of laugh at it now, but I'm quite middle-aged now. I'm laughing about it. There are days when I'm sure we've all felt them when it's more frustrating or agitating. And you want to be blaming something because you're already struggling. But it is quite comical if you reflect on you know, that definition of a repeated behavior getting you the same outcome. We should, you know, look in a different direction. So the best life hacks that people alluded to were disruption. So keep moving, disrupt whatever's going on is obviously not working for you if it's hampering your ability to feel compassion and kindness towards yourself and others, and acknowledge that change. So it is what it is. You kind of have to deal with it. It's there. And to get around it, you're going to have to think differently. So the quiet strength, I think of Rosa Parks, you know, sitting on the back of the bus and her quiet strength and determination. And then also she had shared once her ability to continue doing yoga, to be flowing through things and practicing meditation and breathing to give her the strength to carry on with what she was trying to fight for and demonstrate. And I think those are very wise words that I try to remember. And when I'm forgetting that, you go back to your breath, go back to your movement, go for a walk, come back at it again with a whole new perspective and reframe what's going on. Not to get, like Beverly said, we can get stuck, and that's truth. That's the reality of it. So to admire your own quiet strength and even comment on others would be nice to hear. You know what, I see you're really, you know, putting up this good fight, but maybe go for a walk, take a breath, and come back at it from another direction. So that's kindness, that's compassion in action. To take on that new perspective and savor a cup of tea while you pause, go for a walk in nature, or whatever we do to reset. I just had terrible technical difficulties. We have to turn things off and start over and keep smiling, and it's going to work out. So disrupting that, but staying positive and fluid within that disruption would be the best advice that came back from the surveys. And then again, back to it is what it is, accepting what you're seeing, reflecting on it, leaning on others, truly trusting someone to lean on them and share and disclose, and taking time to understand what you're feeling. Sometimes we kind of want to push it to the back shelf, or, you know, hope it goes away on its own. And quite often things don't go away on their own. They will keep rising up for us. You know, we can't just sweep it away. It doesn't work that way without doing the work. So the impetus to change, we kind of, if we're not sweeping it away, then we're faced with that accountability and ownership to say, what can I do by design? How can I make this work for me, and implement some wellness by design for whatever that looks like for the situation that you're dealing with. And then persistence, it was the third really, really big thing that everyone shared is, how do we stay strong and keep persisting when it feels like the tides are crashing over us and knocking us down? So it was just to keep your hands busy again with the movement, keep busy, keep doing good work, daily habits, again, back to the yoga, mindfulness, breath work, whatever it is that works for you. Keep some structure in your routine. When we do feel fatigued or low, you don't even want to get out of bed or get dressed or, wash your hair, whatever your wellness looks like. Some days that's a struggle. And I think we can all acknowledge that coming out of COVID um, and being distanced. It's nice to get back into society and actually have to show up for yourself and others, because there's some days I think we all didn't show up and just laid on the couch watching Netflix and were immersed in a book, just something to take us away from what was going on through the pandemic. And now we're in pandemic recovery. So how do we be kind to ourselves and others while we're doing the best we can to regain our lives and our businesses, our livelihood, and dealing with everything that the world has shone a light on? Many injustices can still, it can heighten our compassion, and we want to have the reserves to be able to respond. I think it's a good opportunity. So persistence, keeping your balance, expressing yourself. Again, we talked about that earlier. No one's a mind reader, and I think that's where I can fall and slip up, is just thinking that my friends and family know my thoughts by looking at me. And I need to communicate clearly if I want my needs to be met, and not be making assumptions or judging them for being less than, because how do they know what's going on in my head? They could never possibly know. So we have to be honest about that and use our words, again, as we would instruct toddlers, use your words with your feelings. And sometimes in our relationships, we forget that number one important rule of using words. And an attitude of gratitude. So remain curious. Earlier, I heard people saying we don't know where to start to help others. But I think what I've learned from New Amsterdam, if anyone's watched that, is how can I help? Like 4 simple words. I don't have to have all the answers or solutions. I only need to pause long enough to actually ask you, what do you need, and how can I help? You may not want me to do anything. So I may be speculating and spinning my wheels and wasting energy for both of us if I don't truly stop to engage with you and see what you need. And if I ask you, I hope you can be honest and share with me, how can I help? That it's not just one of those hallway moments. Good morning, how are you? Fine, fine, fine. I'm not really fine. Beverly?
I have a question. So how you can help, how can I help is great, but when someone says, well, you should have asked, or why don't you tell me what you need, without just coming out and saying, how can I help? If someone would say, a lot of people say, how can I help to me? And there are other people that don't offer it. And then they would say, well, you should have told me what you needed, or you should have told me how I can help, instead of them saying, so it's a chicken and egg. Who asks the first question? Do you have to wait for them to say, how can I help? Like my family, can they say, how can I help? Or do I have to go to them and say, can you help me? It's kind of the chicken and the egg. I guess I just have to say it is what it is.
I think it's about that communication piece, if I'm hearing you. And I would have to challenge you to say it's about the shared accountability, because obviously there's a disconnect. There can be a disconnect at some time. So, or maybe what you're saying, they're not able to help you with that at that time. And then people feel helpless. So they just walk away because they're not quite sure. But But I also think sometimes it's our perception of what help looks like, right? Someone might say, oh, I helped Maria paint her house. And maybe they were on the driveway discussing the paint chip color, or maybe they were in the house, sanding and painting the walls. Both people may walk away and say, I helped Maria paint her house, which would be a very different picture, right? On our expectations.
One minute before we go into the breakout rooms.
Okay. So just to at the end of the day, just thinking back to ourselves as small children, if there's some advice that you could give your younger self, most of our survey respondents from across the world said they would love themselves first, regardless of what our own capacity is. Accentuate the positive. So try to find positive or the silver lining. Peruse possibilities. So think of other ways to get your needs met. And not keep going down that same path that's not leading us anywhere, and to revere relationships. So to really be honest in those courageous conversations and crucial conversations. Our well-being depends on it, and we need to support one another in a strong, compassionate stance. And asking for help isn't a weakness. It's actually courageous to be able to say that, and appreciating the journey that is a shared lived experience together. Is definitely to know yourself, to find common ground. It all sounds so simple, but it's not within the dynamics of our relationship. So be kind to yourself and others, and hopefully that will get us there to tackle these really tough conversations of change that we see on our nightly news. So I hope we can take higher ground, and when others go low, we'll go high, but we only can if we're compassionate to ourselves and others. And that takes daily work. So
awesome.
I invite you all.
Okay, thank you. Next is our breakout sessions. You will all be separated randomly into 2 breakout rooms. You will find yourself with one of our experts to have a conversation about compassion for 30 minutes, and then we will bring you back into the main room to take part in our healing activity with CMHA Durham. We'll see you back here in a little bit. We are back. Welcome, everyone. I think everyone came back from the breakout room. Next, we have our healing activity with Candace Singh, adult educator at CMHA Durham. Go ahead, Candace.
Share my screen here with everybody. Okay, so for this healing activity, I've decided to do something a little bit different and stretch myself a little bit when it comes to the educator mindset. So I'm actually going to do a mantra with you. So mantras are very powerful tools because sometimes when we say things out loud, it comes into action, right? We hear ourselves say it. So even better if you write it down. So I'm going to actually encourage you, if you can, if you're doing this from your phone, or if you have the ability to do this from your computer, is to screenshot some of the prompts that I'm going to give you today, or write them down as you do this. Okay, so part of my activity is about being kind to ourselves, or all of my activity is about being as kind to ourselves as we are to others. Okay, so that's the theme. So let's start with the first one. And I want you to, you can keep yourself on mute, but I'd like you to read along with me and really feel it. Bring yourself sort of present here. I am deserving of the healthy connections, relationships, the strong support, and the sense of community I provide for others. Okay. We'll say that once more together. I am deserving of the healthy connections, relationships, the strong support, and the sense of community I provide for others. Our second one, this is going to spark hope and optimism here. I am motivated. I am hopeful. I believe in the positive future for myself, just the same as I believe in that for others. Okay, we'll say that once more together. I am motivated. I am hopeful. I believe in the positive future for myself, just the same as I believe in that for others. This one's going to help with our identity piece here. I know who I am. I believe in my strengths. I acknowledge the challenges I face. My validation comes from within. We'll say that once more. I know who I am. I believe in my strengths. I acknowledge the challenges I face. My validation comes from within. This one is going to spark that sense of meaning. I see life as a series of opportunities for self-compassion and self-love. I'll say that one again. I see life as a series of opportunities for self-compassion and self-love. Our last one here is to inspire that feeling of empowerment. I am in control. I am abundant. I empower myself to the same degree as I seek to empower others. We'll say that again. I am in control. I am abundant. I empower myself to the same degree as I seek to empower others. Okay. And in my last slide, this is where you can screenshot it if it's convenient. So put this up here. I'm going to challenge you to read this out or say this to yourself on a daily basis. Ideally, the first thing in the morning to start us off thinking about that Chime framework, that idea of resilience, okay? First phrase again, I am deserving of the healthy connections, relationships, and the strong support and the sense of community I provide for others. I am motivated, I am hopeful, I believe in the positive future for myself, just the same as I believe in that for others. I know who I am, I believe in my strengths, I acknowledge the challenges I face. My validation comes from within. I see life as a series of opportunities for self-compassion and self-love. I am in control. I am abundant. I empower myself to the same degree as I seek to empower others. Or write that down, and this is yours to work with. For those of you who are wondering if you're using a computer, how to do the screenshot feature, you should have a print screen, or on my keyboard, it says print SC button. You can just click that button and then you can paste it. I like to paste it in a Word document so it's easy for me to print. and depending on your phone, it's usually pressing the home button and down. Or you can write it down, because writing it down makes it even more believable to ourselves. See that some of us are still writing it down. This is great. And thank you, Melissa, for including that in the chat too. I appreciate that. It's also in the chat if you want to see.
I'm screenshotting, and it's actually a pretty picture.
That's good. Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful idea, Tracy. Tracy's going to add her own visuals. I love that. It's beautiful. Does anybody need more time to write these down?
You know, I have like when I wake up in the morning, I have a sign that says no bad days. So in my mind, I see that sign, I'm not having no bad days, or I have affirmation pillows in my room. Tranquility and positivity in my environment. But yeah, this is really good. I might post this above my mirror.
That's awesome. Well, I'll leave this up. My last slide was just to say thank you. Just wanted to see how we're all feeling. The more we say it is the more we believe it. So the space we create for others to feel that love and that empathy that we give to others, I hope that we give it to ourselves and learn throughout this experience to give to ourselves.
Is awesome. Some individuals still writing. Okay, awesome. That concludes our healing activity.
Yep.
Thank you very much for a great evening. My name is Carion Fenn on behalf of the Carion Fenn Foundation and our partners, Clarington Public Library and the Municipality of Clarington. We want to thank you. We thank our guests, our speakers, our dignitary for joining us today. And a special thank you to our sponsors, Ajax Legion and the Islamic Society of Ajax. We hope our program will help you moving forward in having that conversation about mental health and allow you to know that it's okay to not feel okay. And it's okay to reach out for support when you need it. Thank you once again. Keep safe and remember, together we're stronger, and have yourself a wonderful night.